Hey, folks, welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. That is not Carlos Monarz. That is Dave Birkett. I don't know how we upgraded down here in Tampa, Florida, but we managed to. Although Carlos does shave, so at least we have
I'll
that.
shave tomorrow. I'll shave. It's maybe a post-victory shave.
It's a post-victory shave. All right, anyway, we're down here at Raymond James Stadium. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers got physically kind of overwhelmed in the second half. The Lions win 26. That's 4 in a row. They're 5-1 on the year. There's so many stories out of here. I don't even know where to start, Dave. You're the expert with this team. Why don't you take the mic, literally?
I'll take it here.
Go.
Well, look, you said 4 straight wins, not just 4 straight by double digits. The first time the Lions have done that since 1991.
Perspective we've been missing here.
There you go. First time the Lions have done that since 1991. I think we all know what happened in 1991. That was the year the Lions last went to the NFC Championship game. I don't know if that's going to happen again, but they do have the best record, or are tied for the best record in the NFL right now. Both the San Francisco 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles lost today. And Shawn, I'll tell you, I think the most impressive thing about the Lions so far is how consistent they've been with some of these victories. I mean, the 49ers lost. They played a good defense, but they played a team that had a backup quarterback. You know, the Eagles, they played a team without their 3 best cornerbacks, and they lost. And this is a Lions team that it doesn't matter who they play, right? Carolina, bad team. They come out, kick their butt. Tampa, much better team. They win on the road, maybe not the most hostile environment, but they're playing really good football on a consistent basis. And that's a hard thing to do in the NFL week in and week out.
No, and speaking of this hostile environment, I mean, I don't want to say half the lower bowl because that's an exaggeration, but I would say a third of the lower bowl, at least on one side of the stadium, was Honolulu Blue. There were Lions fans in the upper deck. We could not see the upper deck above us, but I would bet there were plenty of Lions fans there too. It's just, you could hear the "Let's Go Lions" chants in the fourth quarter. This is the third road game now, right? And it's been that way at Kansas City. I wasn't at Green Bay, but it sounded like it was that way at Green Bay. The players have talked about it in the locker room after the game. Dan Campbell has talked about this. Alexander Zaloni, who just played great. We can talk about him in a second. But they're talking about, you know, by the way, you see Brad Holmes again high-fiving fans and screaming out "Let's go" and all this sort of thing. But the players feel this. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Yes, it's a road game, but when are they going to actually face a real road game with loud noise where they can't hear? I mean, was it Campbell? I can't remember who after the game was talking about that Baker Mayfield almost had to go into silent cadence. There was so much Lions noise in the fourth quarter.
I think maybe not this year at all. I mean, even in the playoffs, because they might have only home games in the playoffs. That's jumping ahead a little bit. But in all honesty, I was joking with somebody the other day, and I said, you know, the Lions are going to end up having, 14 home games just about, because, this wasn't a home game, but there were a lot of Lions fans here. When they go to LA in a few weeks, that's going to be a lot of Lions fans there. New Orleans, Lions fans always travel well there. Some of these, Chicago, there's going to be a lot of Lions fans there. So it's something that give, Lions fans credit. I do think part of it is everyone wants to, there is a fear of missing out. Everyone wants to be a part of this now because this team is so good, right? You don't want to miss out on something that you think may be special. And frankly, the Lions, they do have a shot to do something special here. I mean, they are a really good team right now. And you mentioned all the different storylines today. I mean, David Montgomery goes out, Craig Reynolds comes in, delivers the key block. Amon-Ra St. Brown on Amon-Ra's touchdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown, his first game back, huge game, 12 catches, 124 yards. The touchdown that really, all they needed was one touchdown today, but it was the touchdown that sort of started, the end of the day for the Buccaneers there. Anzalone, who you mentioned, I know you wrote about Alex. He was, obviously his parents were in Israel. We wrote about that a little bit during the week, but his parents were here at the game today. They made it back to Florida earlier this week. The defense played another great game. So things just keep going well for the Lions. And, as we sit here mid-October, I'm thinking about my power rankings for the week. I'll still have the 49ers number 1, even though they lost today. They had some injuries, but the Lions have to be one of the 3 best teams in the NFL right now.
I mean, I would say, and absolutely, just the way they're playing. I mean, you could quibble with the schedule a little bit. I mean, Kansas City, we know who they were missing, and I hate to say that. I don't want to Mike Tirico y'all here, but on the other hand, yes, the Lions fans were here. It was not a hostile home crowd, but it's still a road game. It's still not in their stadium. They still have to get on a plane and travel, and you're in somebody else's environs, and that does make a difference. Back to your point about what's bubbling up here for a sec. And Campbell talking about Baker Mayfield having to go in a silent cadence and people wanting to be on this. I was on my flight down here yesterday when we landed and got to the gate, and the flight attendant came on to talk about, getting your stuff and the boarding door opening and all that. And the last thing she said was, and by the way, go Lions. The crowd, I mean, the plane erupted in applause. My hotel had Lions fans. I'm sure yours did. Alex Anzalone, and I want to talk about him for a sec, mentioned after the game that he's been in the league. I think this is his 7th year. He could not recall a fan base traveling like this. He said, expect that out of Philly. It was maybe the Packers sort of, but they don't have the population to travel like this. Maybe Chicago when it was going Pittsburgh. This feels different in a way. It almost feels like a college team, the way Ohio State fans travel or maybe Michigan fans travel. It's just, and the more they keep winning, I feel like this is going to become a national story, and this team is going to start getting some love, because there are few things in sports, Dave, to me, that are as fun for a fan base as being bad for a long, long, long time and then getting good, especially when the getting good feels a little bit like it's come out of nowhere. I know they finished strong last year, but do you have that sense? Is it still a little surreal to you that they're this good?
Well, I don't know if it's surreal, because I expected them to be a good team. Maybe not 5-1 at this point good, but definitely expected them to be a good team. But yeah, I think, it's a fair point that especially at the beginning of something, right? That's always when the hype is the greatest, when people want to be a part of it. I mean, this isn't the Braves winning their 10th division title in 12 years or whatever, and then people are kind of like, wake me up in the World Series. Right. Yeah. So people do, they want to be a part of this, and they see, for the first time in a long, long time in most people's lives, I think, that are Lions fans, they see a realistic shot for this team to go to the Super Bowl, for being frank. And it's not something you can quibble with right now. They absolutely have a shot. Again, the 49ers, to me, still the best team in the NFL when they're healthy. They're not healthy right now. They lost Trent Williams. They lost McCaffrey today. The Lions, we said last week, were kind of like 49ers light. Well, you know what? They have a better quarterback than the 49ers. Maybe they don't have quite as good a defense, but they got a pretty darn good defense too. And this defense is something that travels. Aaron Glenn has them playing well. Really good against the run again today. I know this was a Tampa team that didn't run it well. I will say the one area I think the Lions have to improve if they are going to be a serious Super Bowl contender come January is that secondary. There are a couple instances out there today, big plays that the Bucs had and they couldn't make because Baker Mayfield missed the throw. The one pass that was tipped early in the game by Isaiah Buggs. Mike Evans was wide open down the field.
That was going to be a 95-yard touchdown.
Right. It was. Evans, Kirby Joseph had run up. Mike Evans was gone if Baker had made the initial read there and made the throw. Two other times at least, Will Harris got beat on one. There was another one where Tracy Walker, Kirby Joseph, I don't know if there was some miscommunication or they just came up early, but the Bucs, had that been a better quarterback, had that been Justin Herbert, who the Lions play in a couple weeks, those are touchdowns. And so, I think when you get to January and you're playing Jalen Hurts and you're playing a good 49ers team, or maybe you're playing Patrick Mahomes or whoever, for it all, those are things that you can't have happen. And so there are some things that I think when they go back and watch the tape, the Lions will need to clean up. But in the here and now, Sunday night, 5-1, I'm sure for Lions fans, I know for Lions players and coaches, it feels good to be at this spot.
Hey there, listener. This is audio producer Robin here. We encountered some technical difficulties with our primary mic at this point in the show, and we had to switch to our backup audio. Thank you for your understanding, and with that said, here's the rest of the show.
No, for sure. Get back to Anzalone for a second. We played, I think, his best game of the season, and he's playing the best ball of his career this year. And part of it's because of the positional shift, and we talked to him about after the game, he moved from the inside, the middle spot, the Mike spot, to the outside, the weak side, to the Will spot. And you don't have to think quite as much where he's at. Not that he's not a thinker. His teammates and coaches talk about him as one of the smartest players. Praise, and I wrote about this. But that doesn't mean it's not true. He is smart. He is savvy. He's all those things. He's pretty athletic. He can actually run. He's got good speed, and he's a thumper when he gets there. You don't think of him that way, but he's physical and he feels it. And he's 29 years old. He's been in the league 7 years. His combination of experience and time, and now he's surrounded by better talent. And he's never felt better physically. And he talked about the Will spot. He feels liberated. He likes to think he can play both. He told me tonight he feels liberated. He's seeing and he's going. And Dan Campbell said, this is his coach. He's going to be biased a little bit. He said, hey, you'd be hard pressed to find another backup playing as played as well or better, or at least better than he is.
Yep.
And I think that when he was signed, what do people think of Alex Anzalone? He was the whipping boy that first year, even a little bit last year with the defense struggle in the first half. But the way he's come along, to me, he's a great sort of, not metaphor, but just you look at him, the whole team's doing that. You're talking about the secondary need to get better. Kirby Joseph maybe won't make that mistake 6 weeks, right? 6 weeks down the road. Maybe they're not going to be the miscommunication. So they're going to get Brian Branch back. They're going to get Jahmyr Gibbs at some point. I want you to talk about Jameson Williams here in a second. But to me, Anzalone and what he's doing, the team, a lot of the young guys have the chance. You're not going to make all those leaps like he's done in several years in one season, but they're going to be better. I think they're just what they're playing, the way they're playing right now. I think they got another level in them in another couple of months if they get healthy and all things go right. Well, and the young guy on the outside of the offense in particular.
Yeah. Look, I think, we've said this. I feel like, I say this frequently, when we talk about the Lions defense is the depth that they have on that side of the ball is unlike, anything that we've seen in recent memory. They may not have Pro Bowlers at every or many spots, but they've got a pretty deep defensive line. Hutchinson didn't do much today, and we didn't, it didn't impact them at all because they played really well against the run. That linebacker unit was really good. And if something happens to Alex Anzalone, guess what? You got Jack Campbell in reserve or Malcolm Rodriguez in reserve, a starting caliber player in the NFL, not playing the same quality. And that's sort of the same thing in the secondary, right? C.J. Gardner-Johnson goes down, Tracy Walker steps in. Well, maybe, Tracy doesn't give them exactly what C.J. gave them, but he's more than serviceable, safe.
Yeah, he's a good, solid player, right?
Yeah. So there's enough talent on that side of the ball to overcome the injuries that they've had, even though, missing Gardner Johnson, missing Mosley, not having Josh Paschal in his last few weeks, that's something that can and will hurt them. Offensively, look, Ben Johnson does a wonderful job with the offense. Jared Goff is playing really good football. The offensive line is always a strength, and so that's going to be a constant. You mentioned Jameson Williams. Look, he had a touchdown today, and good for him, right? That's something that should be celebrated. I mean, it was a nice play on the ball. He turned one way, turned the other, had to turn all the way back around again. So it was one of those plays. The microphone just fell out there, so I hope my
yeah, that's okay.
But anyways, Jameson, look, he made a big play. They need him to be complete on offense. They need him to be that deep threat, to be a consistent threat on the outside. And one game does not necessarily mean that's happening because you watch him in pregame warmups. He dropped one pass, then the next pass, he kind of ticks off his fingers. I wouldn't call it a drop. Then he catches the ball. Then he drops the third one, the pass later. So there's still a lot that he needs to work on. And maybe he gets picked on a little bit because he's the number 12 pick and people expect more, but you should expect more when you're picked that high. And he's loaded with talent, and he's a guy that has to deliver, and they need him to be there. He made that one big play tonight, but really for this offense to be where it needs to be again in January. And I know it's a while till we get there, and that's why, Dan said today, right, they want guys that are sort of like this, steady incline. You don't need to go way up right away. But they need Jamo to continue on that track because if he doesn't, bring that, I don't know that they have that deep threat, and they can't really afford to not have him be a part of this offense.
No, because as good as the other pieces are, we saw. I mean, today was a good example of Sam Laporta. It was kind of, I hate to say welcome to the NFL, but those are by far the best linebackers he's seen. And it showed. He did not get, he could
quiet
not.
Day?
He had a quiet day. He did have one drop. It was funny because he had a drop right after, I want to say right after Jameson had a drop. No, or maybe it was the other way. He had a drop and Jameson had a drop. Yeah, okay. Anyway, it was a back-to-back drops and the 45-yard touchdown to Williams. But Laporta, who's really, really good, had a little bit more of a time today because he faced really good linebackers. San Francisco's got to be arguably the best linebackers in the game. Yeah. So there's going to be times like that where you can't just go to Laporta. So Williams can help open that up. And Gibbs is another piece too. They can line him up. I know that they were playing around a little bit with it, assuming Montgomery doesn't miss too much time, but Montgomery can be in the backfield. Gibbs can still be out there in the slot somewhere. So they've got some more toys and ideas and sets, designs to play with if they can get healthy. You could see this offense actually
It's like
being almost special.
Someone is always going to be on, or someone always should be on when you have some of these parts. I mean, I still think they, maybe they lack a piece or two in the receiving core until Jameson comes up. But, Montgomery's had a really good run so far. Been a little bit banged up. Gibbs can be a perimeter rushing and receiving threat. So they have some pieces for Ben Johnson to play with. And the way Jared is playing right now and the way Ben is calling plays, it's a really good offense.
Well, now you sound like Carlos talking about Ben, but and let's not forget, Josh Reynolds has had a knack for several weeks now of not just making big catches, but catches at the right time, at the time where they need to get loose a little bit. They need to flip the fields to some degree. They need to score. It was kind of everything was kind of bogged down there a bit. Reynolds had another
third down catch behind him today, and then he had a block to free up St. Brown, I think, to pick up a first down on a bubble screen. So he does some big things that definitely get over. Only 3 catches, but they were all big catches.
They were, and we've seen that. We've seen that from a lot of guys. So what do you expect? So next week they're in Baltimore. That's not going to be easy. It's always a well-coached team. Lamar Jackson's one of the tougher covers in the league. They're always solid defensively. Again, I can't remember what their record is. I think they beat Tennessee today, right? The Titans. Was that over in London again or Paris? Sure. I don't know. Europe is taking over.
Get ready. We got to go there next year, maybe.
Yeah, we're exactly
somewhere.
Yeah, that might be kind of fun. But anyway, so that's going to be I would think another good solid test. But now that they're 5-1, they win next week. What are we looking at all of a sudden? I don't know what your preseason projection was. Mine was 11. But if they keep this up, we might need to rethink a little bit about 11.
Well, I started to write that, and this will be tomorrow. Just kind of the Lions again. They have the best record, tied for the best record in the NFL right now, and it's no fluke. And at 11, or at 5-1 right now, and with the schedule that's ahead, one of the most favorable schedules in the NFL. Look, they're going to lose some games, right? They might lose to Baltimore next week.
They very easily could.
If I'm picking right now, I'll probably pick them to lose that game just because it's tough to win this many straight games in the NFL. The first time they won 4 straight since 16, I think it is. So, right, that's a long time to go without winning 4 straight. Teams just don't do. Even last year, they won 3, then they lost. They won 3, then they lost. They won at the end of the year, then they, beginning of this year, then they lost. So it's been a long time since they've strung 4 straight together. That's a really tough thing to do. But they are playing really consistent football. They don't have the big dips that some of these other teams do. And Baltimore is a team that's going to bring a really good defense like this one today. They've shut down Tennessee's running game, at least in the first half. I know Derrick Henry had a few yards in the second half there, but Baltimore does a really good job against the run too. So the Lions are going to need to have some balance in offense. But as I look ahead on the schedule, Shawn, there's a lot of wins left there, right? Dallas at the end of the year, go to Dallas, that'll be a tough one. Some of these division wins,
the Chargers
in
LA.
Look, that's another one it's not going to be a great home field advantage for the Chargers, but that's the best quarterback the Lions face. And with the Lions' issues in the secondary, that's something that, it's not going to be an easy mountain for them to climb. Even the division games, like the Lions are clearly the best team in the division, but, it's not always you go 6-0 even when you're a really good team in the division. So there could be a loss or 2 in there. But look, if we're talking 3 or 4 losses left on the schedule at most, that's 13 wins.
Yeah, 12 to 13.
Yeah,
12 to 13.
That's getting you a 1, 2, at worst 3 seed in the NFC. If you're the 1 seed, obviously you have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. If you're the 2, you're playing your first 2 playoff games at home at least, and then, you see what happens in the NFC Championship game. So it's too early for Dan, for the team, for the players to maybe start thinking about that, but it's not too early for us to start talking about that.
No, it never is. And I shouldn't say it. I shouldn't say it never is because this is new.
Right.
It's, maybe in other sports or in other towns or whatever, other markets, but it's just, maybe it's not surreal. It's still, I know it's you expect it. You picked them to win today. I picked them to win today. What do we know? But still, they were favored. If I'm not, the odds makers favored them. So I still think there's. I don't want to say this is crazy or anything like that, but it's just you're talking about 6 decades, and I know there were some good years sprinkled in here and there. But they haven't looked like this, Dave. You mentioned 91. I don't think they started this way since 2011, I want to say. It was the last time they started 5-1. And they had a good team that year. But it's just, it's all of that history. And what's different about this is those years were good, 2011, 2014. I don't think the fan base, I don't think folks in Michigan and Michiganders, where they are, ever thought about the general manager and the coach and the combination and even the owner, right?
100%.
And the way they do right now, it feels different. And it makes Sundays different. You know, it's funny. My son called. I couldn't take his call. It was on a deadline. But I called him back real quickly between deadlines, between editions, and talked to him for a couple of quick minutes. And he was talking about him and all his friends. You hear this, I'm sure, all the time, about how they cannot wait for Sunday to get here. Lions fans have always been incredibly loyal. It's one of the most loyal fan bases in the country, in the league, rather. But I keep hearing this over and over. People can't wait for Sunday. They're making plans ahead of time for Sunday. And the intensity of that feeling is new. And I just, it's really something, to be honest with you. And we saw that in this stadium again here today, the effort people make and the love they're showing these players.
No, you mentioned 2011 and 2014, and this is a totally different vibe than those. I mean, I think there was a lot of hype. I said this before, 2012 going into that season, because 2011 Lions made the playoffs for the first time in forever. 2011 they start 5-0. Jabba Best gets hurt, but the Packers were red hot that year too, if I remember right. And so I don't know that anyone ever felt that. There was a lot of optimism. Stafford was young, but I don't think anyone ever felt like, they're winning the division, they're going to the Super Bowl that year. 2014, they had a really good defense, but they didn't win the division that year. It was the same thing. Packers at the end of the season won that game. That was for the division. And so, this is the first time that everything has matched up. You mentioned the owner, right? The GM, the coach, the talent on the field, the division, the schedule, frankly, right? This is the first time. Chicago is not much to speak of. Minnesota, Green Bay, no one in the division holds a candle to the Lions. So it's easy to see this team winning the division, which means it's easy to see them getting a home playoff game. It's easy to see them winning a home playoff game, especially against the caliber team that they would face in the first round. And then when you watch Philadelphia and you watch San Francisco, the other top teams in the NFC, and you see that the Lions stack up pretty well against them. It's not, it's not this long shot that man hopes and dreams and, if we ever could get to that spot. No, it feels tangible right now that the Lions could be a team that has a deep playoff run. And that's the first time probably since those early 90s when I was, a kid. So I don't have maybe the greatest, sense of what that meant to the community because I was, high school or 91, I guess, probably 8th grade. So, this is the first time in my adult life that I think this team has given this town that sort of vibe.
And I would say, real quick, and I'll finish with this because we want to let you guys go, and you got an early flight to catch, and we still have
6 a.m.
6 a.m. We still have work to do. The 91 team, of course, had Barry Sanders.
Yep.
The 2011 or 2014 team anyway had Calvin Johnson and Dominican Sue. This team doesn't have a star at the level of Johnson or Sanders or even Sue. What it does have that I don't think any of those three teams had, and maybe the 91 team had more of it, it's just the lines, the line of scrimmage on both sides, and the really talent and good play. Maybe not all pros everywhere, but they got young guys with potential to be Pro Bowlers. They got positions. They got talented positions everywhere. And every position group. They're thin at secondary because of injuries, right? But Brian Branch is somebody I'm talking about. Kirby Joseph maybe down the road, whatever. I mean, Jack Campbell, I know he's got a ways to go, but that feels a little bit different. Is the talent level top to bottom in the depth?
I'll just add this before we go. Lomas Brown said something to me the other day where, he said it's the first time that he could ever remember in his lifetime, sort of this feeling for the organization. I said, even 91, like even back when you were playing back then. And he said from the top down sort of vibe that you talked about, that everyone seems to be in unison, where everything is lined up, ownership, GM, coach, players, assistants, that sort of the entire organization. I don't know that was the case in 91 again. I was a kid, so I don't have any real firsthand knowledge of that. But for a player that was at the heart of it, that was a key player for them to say this is the first time in his lifetime that everything lines up like this. That just tells me that, I don't know, maybe this is a special time here in Detroit.
It's funny you mentioned Lomas Brown. I was just about to say, he told me a month ago that this offensive line is better than what. And he played on a decent offense. He was a really good player himself.
That 91 line before those guys, before Utley and
the exactly. They were good, but he said even that line, and it's a different era so far. It wasn't as athletic. He said this line is better, and you see that. The other difference is Jared Goff may not be an all-pro. He's not Patrick Mahomes or Herbert as you're talking about, but he was certainly better than Eric Kramer was. Not that Eric Kramer was bad, and not even, but that's the other thing. I mean, we didn't even talk about Jared Goff. He just continues week in and week out, and we can talk about more about him. But his second half today was as good as they couldn't run the ball, and he got in a groove and won them the game in a lot of ways offensively.
No, he's playing. I think better than most people, myself included, thought he would when the Lions made that trade. So you got to give Jared Goff his credit and give him his due because he's been a big part of the success that the Lions have had. And frankly, they wouldn't be here without him because you can see Tampa had a really good defense. They do some similar things to the Lions, right? They want to control the ball, and they've got a new coordinator in here, and they got a couple pretty good receivers, but they can't do the same things that the Lions can do on offense. And I think that's because of the quarterback in some ways. So Goff is right; he's not Patrick Mahomes, but he's definitely established himself in that second tier of quarterback, somebody that you can certainly win with and win big with now. And maybe people didn't think that when the Lions made that trade a couple years ago.
No, I wrote about this. I read about this. I'll probably write about this again. Every game, he makes 3 or 4 throws. They're like, did you see that throw? Where people run the press box are talking, oh, wow, what a ball that was, right? I mean, he's not. I mean, maybe he's a game manager or whatever, but on top of that, he throws a nice ball, man. You give him some time, and he can pick you apart in ways that maybe we didn't fully realize when he came here. In any case, we got. We don't want that happening, do we? We got a lot more to talk about. You got a lot to read out there. I want you to come back and read Dave Birkett's coverage, second to none, best beat writer in the business. I can say that. Carlson would say that here if he were. The Carlson would say that too if he were here. So come back to Freak.com, check out Dave. Check out what we've all done. We got Lions coverage the rest of the week. You will be in Baltimore. I will not be. I've got Michigan State Saturday night. Yeah, exactly. Maybe we can sell that to Michigan fans. Who knows? Michigan State's got a new quarterback. I don't know. Maybe they'll keep it closer.
Michigan's rolling too.
A quarter, yeah. No, they are. And that's a fun story too, but it's not the Lions. Sorry, Michigan fans. It's just not. Y'all know that. You guys won a title in the 90s. That's not 1957. So, in any case, all right. For Dave Birkett, Shawn Winter, for the Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn, with a pretty good guest star. Yeah, we will be back later this week. Carlos will join me Tuesday or Wednesday this week, and we'll be back with more. Until then, we'll talk to you.